And the sergeant came to me one day and said that he was trying to find out which circuit was broken. They would tap in and ring. And if you got an answer only at one end, you knew that there was a break and you knew which direction to go further on. But he said he tapped into a line with a conversation going on. He said it was more an argument. The one end was an officer of the 5th Army headquarters, forward headquarters. The other end was an officer at the ordnance depot. The Army officer wanted more artillery shells. Ordnance told him they're not available. He said, I saw them myself 2 weeks ago at your depot. Depot said they're not available. Why? Now the big answer was, we're holding them for Nettuno. What a breach of security. The sergeant said there was a complete silence for about 3 or 4 seconds. They realized what they did, and then they both hung up. Now, this was only about 4 months before the invasion of Anzio. When he said, we're holding them for Nettuno, the sergeant said, what's Nettuno? I said, well, that's either the name of an operation or a geographical location. I looked on the map and I found Nettuno. It was 2 or 3 miles east of Anzio, where the invasion called Shingle was made. Field Marshal Kesselring, his intelligence people really missed the boat, because there was one conversation like that on our open wire system. There must have been many, and it was so simple. There were 1,600 poles that could have been climbed to attach a wire and then sit in the bushes and listen. What a breach of security that was. Well, another coincidence was, I went to our officers' mess. We usually had visitors. And I saw one empty seat. I sat down, looked at the officer on my left, didn't know him, and we both put our hands out to shake hands, and we both said exactly the same thing. The name's Grosselfinger. This was the cousin, the orthopedic surgeon. What a coincidence.
A. Day. I had a nickname called Fats because I had a twin brother, and my dad nicknamed us when we were babies, Fats and Pee-wee. The way I got into service was actually waited to get drafted, but this was because I had gone down for the officers candidate school where I passed the written exam, but my eyes were too bad for the Navy. And the Navy would let you play intercollegiate athletics, which my twin brother and I wanted to do, and the Army wouldn't. So we just decided to wait to get drafted. So then it didn't take long to draft kids in those days. I was in Mason City, Iowa, and they had 2 draft boards, A and B. So we were lucky, we got B, so we had 2 weeks extra grace. The class went down to Des Moines, got entered into the Army, most of them, and came back for graduation, and then they left, and then 2 weeks later they got the rest of us. They said, you can have the Seabees or the Army. I said, what happened to the Marine Corps? And they said, your eyes are too bad. So I said, well, what are the Seabees? Oh, that's a fighting outfit. You fight for an island, and then you build an airfield, and then you defend it. And I said, well, I'll go into that. And I was just outside of Williamsburg, Virginia. And we had 2 weeks, or a month, I think, of basic, maybe 2 months. And then I got called out. They wanted to send me to a malaria control school, which took a month or so, and I missed my battalion. And I was very fortunate there because I would have been in the 132nd Battalion, and they later ended up at Iwo Jima. And then they sent me up to Rhode Island, Providence, Rhode Island, Camp Endicott. just outside of Providence. And that was advanced training. And then after that, they transferred me and we came back to Providence. Took a troop train, took 7 days to go across the country. And Camp Parks in California. Camp Parks, we were just waiting to get sent overseas, and I drove a dump truck and a cement truck, anything that keep you busy there, and they give you guard duty periodically. And I don't know why they had us on guard duty inside the camp, but they did around our square block area. Next step was in March of '44. We got on the Matsonia, which was the flagship of the Matson Line. They had 2,000 Seabees, 2,000 soldiers, and 400 waves. And waves and officers. And they were on the second deck, and the enlisted men couldn't go up on that deck. And we went to Hawaii, and we landed on Oahu, next to Yaloa Tower, which hadn't been fixed yet because it had been damaged in the bombing. And it was St. Patrick's Day, 1944. I got assigned to a lumber yard, and actually we were working with civilians. I drove what they called a heister, which is one of those high wheel things where you clamp the lumber, drive it from one side of the sawmill into the other side. I think they wanted to use the lumber for the Navy. It was the demurrage and the dunnage off of the ships that were for ballast. They used it. That's what I was told, to come into Hawaii, and they would put it on this little semi-large. They had a train there that was half size or something, but they would bring it into the lumber yard, and our people would stack it up, and it was a big lumber yard, just north of Hickam Field. Well, after a year of that, basically, it was just work. We built reefers for the Navy, crated them up, refrigerators, and basically it was just work. Well, the Seabees were formed early in the war, and they used it for construction battalions. And because it said CB, they had a B emblem, CB, and carrying a machine gun, and it was a cute little cartoonish type character, and that was the Seabees. When I thought about coming home, we thought about, reuniting with the family, and because of the point system, I didn't have any points, because when you didn't have any dependents, first of all, if you had a dependent, you got 10 points, and you needed 40 points to get out, I think, or 44. And I think I had 20, and I'd been in for 2.5 years. So the Navy didn't recognize overseas. Well, World War II, we were standing up for our ideals, and I think they haven't changed, and we kept them, and we had faith that we were doing the right thing, and so we thought we were on the right side, and I think we still feel that way today. Unfortunately, it seemed like every few years you get a war going, and when I was growing up, there were 3 wars you had to study in school: the Civil War, the Cuban crisis in '98, and the First World War. And since that time, I don't know how many wars we've had, and I kept thinking they tried the First World War to end all wars, and then we got into the second one, which was even bigger. And for some reason, the human nature, they can't seem to stay out of wars.